Hello there. My name is Christopher Evan Hutcheson, and I am the Associate Pastor at Bear Creek No. 1 Baptist Church in Bear Creek, Alabama. Thinking through how God has called me to the Air Force Chaplain Corps, between active duty and the reserves, I've been in the Air Force for 14 years now. And during that time, I've been through the multiple PCSs, the deployments, the stressful situations, the balancing act of being separated from family for months on end, while at the same time being expected to perform in high tempo and high stress environments. I've done things that I look back on and I'm proud of, and there are things of which I'm not proud of. My last active duty base before I transitioned into the reserves was Cannon Air Force Base. I was PCSing from Anderson Air Force Base, Guam, when I found out that I was going to Cannon. And I must admit that I wasn't all that excited about it. But as is so often the case, I had no idea what God had in store for my wife and I in sending us there. What we thought was going to be the worst place for us to go wound up being the exact place in which we needed to go. And many times in my life, I have wondered where things were headed, right? I've wondered how things were going to turn out. And over again, as I look back in hindsight on those things, I see God's hand at work. And that's what I think about when I think about our 7 years at Cannon. We became members of First Baptist Church there in Clovis, New Mexico. It's now been renamed to Restoration Baptist Church. But the pastor and the congregation there poured into my wife and I, and the Lord used those brothers and sisters in just a really profound way. God answered my wife's prayers there, and He called me out of my childish ways that I was still holding on to. My wife and I, we both grew so much in our relationship with the Lord in those 7 years. And I'm a firm believer that the best way to get our horizontal relationships right, our relationships with one another, is to get our vertical relationship, our relationship with God right. And I feel that has been evidenced over and over again in my marriage, in my friendships, and in all of my relationships. It was there in Clovis, New Mexico, where I started getting involved in worship ministry. I play guitar and I sing. Small groups, one-on-one discipleship. It was just a very active church. And in 2019, I began having the conversation with my wife about feeling as though the Lord was calling me into ministry, namely that He was calling me to the Air Force Chaplain Corps. As I had been growing in my enlisted career, I was really finding out how much I enjoyed caring for and serving my fellow airmen. And I just remember that it got to the point in which it was being made so clear to me that the Chaplain Corps was a way to serve my fellow airmen, but to do so in what I would call a much deeper and just a more impactful way. So after about 4 months of discussing this with my wife and my pastor and friends and family, and even a couple of chaplains from Cannon Air Force Base, one of which was part of our congregation, and after hearing all of them confirm to me that they indeed thought that God was calling me into ministry, my wife and I made the decision that we were going to pursue it. And that's what we have been doing for the past 6.5 years. I became the discipleship training director at Bear Creek No. 1 Baptist Church in September of 2022, and I stayed in that position until I was ordained in February of 2024 and became the associate pastor. During these past years in ministry, that has meant preaching regularly, counseling, crafting and teaching Bible studies, leading worship, business meetings, budgets, the ordinances of the church, officiating funerals. I've also been a part-time apprentice funeral director during that time. So I have quite a lot of time spent. I've spent quite a lot of time around death and the dying and walking with families through the grief that comes with that. And I feel that all of my experiences, both in the military and as a civilian, the trials and the successes, the highs and the lows, have all shaped me and, God willing, prepared me to be an effective chaplain to our airmen. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your consideration. Thank you.